What if one of the most infamous conspiracy documents in modern history was never evidence at all? A document claiming that a secret Jewish leadership had created a plan to control governments, the press, finance, and society. It became known as the Protocols of the Elders of Zion. For decades, people have pointed to it as supposedly proving a vast Jewish conspiracy. But there is a problem. The document is a forgery. And understanding how that forgery was created and why people believed it takes us into one of the most important stories about propaganda in modern history. The Protocols appeared publicly in the Russian Empire in the early 20th century. It presented itself as the minutes of secret meetings supposedly held by Jewish leaders plotting world domination. The alleged plans included manipulating politics, controlling financial systems, influencing newspapers, and undermining society. On the surface, that sounds like explosive evidence. But there was a crucial problem. There was no secret meeting. There was no Jewish council producing these plans. And there was no authentic historical organization corresponding to the supposed Elders of Zion. The document was fabricated. One of the strongest pieces of evidence came from comparing the protocols with an earlier political satire. Large portions of the supposed secret Jewish plan closely resemble passages from a 19th century French political text by Maurice Joly. Joly's work was not about Jews secretly controlling the world. It was a political attack on Napoleon III. Someone later adapted material from that work and transformed it into an alleged Jewish conspiracy. That distinction matters. A text can look like a secret revelation while actually being recycled political fiction. And that's exactly what makes propaganda dangerous. The protocols didn't spread because it suddenly produced convincing evidence. It spread because it appeared during a period of political instability, fear, revolution, and social upheaval. People were looking for simple explanations for complicated problems. Instead of asking why economies collapsed, why governments failed, or why political movements became violent, conspiracy propaganda offered a single villain. Everything could supposedly be explained by one hidden group. That is one of the recurring patterns of conspiracy thinking. A complicated world is reduced to a secret plan. Random events become coordinated. Disagreement becomes evidence of manipulation. And the absence of evidence can even be interpreted as proof that the conspiracy is hiding its tracks. Today, the same basic pattern can appear in new forms. A celebrity is successful, a financial institution becomes powerful, a media company makes a controversial decision, a billionaire funds a political cause, and suddenly unrelated events are connected into one enormous theory. Names such as George Soros or the Rothschild family are sometimes inserted into these narratives as supposed proof of a hidden network. But individual people having wealth, influence, or political connections is not evidence that an entire ethnic or religious group secretly controls society. Claims like that require actual evidence, not guilt by association. So if the Protocols was forged, who created it? Why did newspapers publish it? How did it move from a piece of political propaganda into an international conspiracy theory? And why does a document that was exposed as fraudulent more than a century ago still appear in modern misinformation? But the document had a fatal weakness. Its supposed secret meetings never happened, and investigators eventually discovered that much of its language had been copied from an entirely different political work. So how did the truth come out? The answer begins with a journalist willing to compare the text line by line. In 1921, British journalist Philip Graves published a series of articles in the Times of London examining the protocols. Graves had discovered something remarkable. Passages from the supposedly secret Jewish document closely matched material from Maurice Joly's 1864 political satire, The Dialogue in Hell Between Machiavelli and Montesquieu. The comparison was devastating. Joly's book contained political arguments and imagined conversations, but the later protocols had transformed much of that material into alleged statements from Jewish conspirators. It was like discovering that an apparently secret document was built partly from an old book that had nothing to do with Jews at all. And the plagiarism wasn't the only problem. The supposed conspirators were also difficult to identify. There were no authentic records of the meetings described by the protocols, no credible archival trail, no genuine organization corresponding to the mysterious Elders of Zion, and no reliable evidence showing that the text documented an actual Jewish plan. The more researchers examined it, the more the supposed conspiracy collapsed. What remained was propaganda disguised as a leaked document, but exposing a forgery doesn't automatically stop it from spreading. That is an uncomfortable lesson from the history of misinformation. Once people become emotionally invested in a story, evidence against it may be dismissed as part of the conspiracy itself. A newspaper says the document is fraudulent. The newspaper is supposedly controlled. A historian explains the plagiarism. The historian is supposedly part of the cover-up. An original source cannot be found. That supposedly means the conspirators destroyed it. This creates a closed system of reasoning where every piece of evidence can be reinterpreted to support the original belief. And that's why conspiracy propaganda can survive long after its claims have been disproven. The protocols also demonstrated something that would become increasingly important in the 20th century. Propaganda doesn't need to be true to be influential. It only needs to be repeated. A pamphlet can become a newspaper story. A newspaper story can become a political speech. A political speech can become a classroom rumor. And eventually, a rumor can become something people remember as common knowledge. The internet has made that process even faster. Today, an old conspiracy document can be photographed, uploaded, clipped into a short video, and presented to millions of people without its history being explained. A screenshot can look like evidence. A confident narrator can sound authoritative. And repetition can create the illusion of verification. This brings us back to Hollywood. The claim that Jews secretly control Hollywood is not evidence of a single coordinated conspiracy. Hollywood has always involved thousands of people, competing companies, investors, executives, artists, writers, actors, unions, distributors, and audiences. Some Jewish individuals have certainly been highly influential in American entertainment. That's a historical fact. But turning the success of particular individuals into a claim that Jews collectively control the industry is a completely different argument. It replaces evidence about specific people and institutions with assumptions about an entire religious or ethnic group. And that is precisely the kind of reasoning that helped conspiracy propaganda survive in the first place. It's about a method. Take political fears. Give them a secret enemy. Create a document that appears authoritative. Repeat the story until familiarity starts to feel like proof. And when someone challenges it, claim that the challenge itself proves the conspiracy. That method didn't disappear with the protocols. It simply found new technology. But there's a bigger question. Why do conspiracy theories like this continue to appear? And how can we investigate powerful people and institutions without turning suspicion into prejudice? There is nothing wrong with investigating powerful institutions. Hollywood companies have enormous cultural influence. Billionaires fund political causes. Governments make controversial decisions. Media organizations make editorial choices. Corporations lobby politicians. All of these things can and should be investigated with evidence. But there's an important difference between saying, this particular person or organization did something questionable, and saying, an entire ethnic or religious group secretly controls everything. The first is a claim that can be tested. The second turns individual actions into collective blame. Consider names that frequently appear in conspiracy videos, such as George Soros or the Rothschild family. There are legitimate questions that can be asked about wealthy individuals. Who receives their donations? Which political organizations do they support? What policies do they advocate? How much influence does their money actually have? Those questions can be investigated using financial records, public statements, corporate documents, and credible journalism. But attaching those names to an alleged centuries-old ethnic conspiracy doesn't make the conspiracy true. A famous surname is not evidence. A photograph is not evidence. A coincidence is not evidence. And repeating a claim thousands of times doesn't turn it into a fact. There are several warning signs to watch for. First, a claim says one group is secretly responsible for an enormous number of unrelated events. Second, the evidence consists mostly of anonymous sources, screenshots, unexplained connections, or documents with questionable origins. Third, anyone who disagrees is automatically labeled part of the conspiracy. Fourth, the argument depends on ethnicity or religion rather than the documented actions of specific individuals. And fifth, the storyteller constantly tells you that the absence of evidence is itself evidence. When you encounter those signs, stop. Ask a simple question. What would actually prove this claim false? If the answer is nothing, you're probably not dealing with an evidence-based investigation. You're dealing with a belief system that has been designed to resist verification. Social media has made this problem even more complicated. Algorithms reward attention. Outrage generates clicks. Short videos remove context. And dramatic claims are often more shareable than careful explanations. A creator can take a historical document, remove its context, add ominous music, insert famous names, and present the result as a shocking revelation. But the presentation isn't the evidence. The question is always, where did this claim originate? Can the source be independently verified? What do primary documents actually say? And what do reliable historians and investigators conclude after examining the evidence? The lasting lesson of the protocols isn't that there is a hidden group controlling the world. It's almost the opposite. The story demonstrates how easily people can be persuaded by a document that looks authoritative but has a false origin. It shows how political fear can be transformed into hatred, and it shows how a fabricated story can survive even after its foundations have been exposed. That makes the protocols important to study not because it proves a conspiracy, but because it demonstrates how conspiracy propaganda works. So the next time you encounter a claim that a secret group controls an industry, a government, or an entire country, don't ask only, does this sound possible? Ask, what is the evidence? Who created the source? When was it created? Can the claim be independently verified? Are individual actions being confused with the behavior of an entire population? And are we investigating a real institution or simply searching for a villain? Those questions won't make every mystery disappear, but they can keep us from turning suspicion into falsehood and falsehood into hatred. The protocols began as propaganda. Its survival is a warning, not about one particular group secretly controlling society, but about how easily fabricated stories can become powerful when people stop checking where they came from.